Princess Zara stood on the balcony of her tower, watching smoke rise from the distant battlefield. Another day meant another 1,000 soldiers who would never return home. The war with the Crothan Federation had been going on for 30 years now, and her people were tired. Very tired. "Your Highness," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Minister Kale, her father's oldest advisor. His blue skin looked pale these days, and his usually bright eyes seemed dim with worry. "What news from the front?" Zara asked, though she already knew it would not be good. "We lost the mining colonies on Zirian Prime," Kale said softly. "General Voss fought bravely, but the Crothan had too many ships. Too many weapons." Zara closed her eyes. Those colonies fed half their empire. Without them, people would go hungry within months. The Crothan Federation seemed to have endless resources, endless soldiers willing to die for their expansion across the galaxy. "There is something else," Kale continued. "Your father wants to see you in the throne room. The human ambassadors have arrived." Humans. Zara had heard about them but never met one. They were a strange species that had appeared in galactic politics only 50 years ago. Most species either conquered or were conquered, but humans did something different. They made peace. Somehow, they had managed to end 3 major wars just by talking to people. Other species respected them, though no one really understood why. The throne room felt cold as Zara entered. Her father, King Darrow, sat on the crystal throne that had belonged to their family for 800 years. He looked older than his 50 years, the war having aged him badly. Beside him stood 2 figures unlike any beings Zara had ever seen. The humans were smaller than most galactic species, with smooth skin that looked almost fragile. They had strange, small eyes and hair that grew from the tops of their heads. They wore simple dark clothing that seemed more like uniforms than the elaborate robes most ambassadors preferred. "Daughter," King Darrow said, his voice heavy. "Meet Ambassador Lisa Chen and Ambassador Ben Torres. They come with a proposal that could save our people." The female human stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Princess Zara, we are honored to meet you. We have studied your species and your culture for many years. We know your people value honor and family above all else. What do you want?" Zara asked directly. She had no patience for diplomatic dancing while her people died. The male human, Ben, spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but somehow commanded attention. "We want to help end this war. The Crothan respect strength, but they fear isolation. If your people allied with humans, it would change the balance of power in this sector." "And why would humans want to ally with us?" Zara asked. "What do you gain?" "Peace," Ben said simply. "War is expensive for everyone. When species fight, it disrupts trade, destroys resources, and causes suffering. We prefer stability." Ambassador Chen opened a small device that projected a holographic map. "The Crothan have been expanding for 2 centuries. They have conquered 47 species and enslaved the populations. Your people are the first to successfully resist them for more than a decade. But resistance is not victory," King Darrow said sadly. "We are losing ground every month. Which is why we propose a formal alliance," Ben said. "A treaty that would bring human support to your war effort." Zara felt a spark of hope, but she was not naive. "And the price for this alliance?" The 2 humans looked at each other. Ambassador Chen spoke carefully. "In our experience, the strongest alliances are those sealed by marriage between ruling families. It creates bonds that transcend politics." The hope in Zara's chest turned to ice. "You want me to marry a human?" "Specifically, Ambassador Torres," Chen said, gesturing to Ben. "He has the authority to represent humanity in such an arrangement." Zara looked at Ben more carefully. He seemed calm and patient, not like someone who had just proposed marriage to a stranger. His brown eyes held intelligence, but also something else she could not identify. Sadness, perhaps. This is absurd, Zara said. We are different species. How would such a marriage even work? Human and Vulcan biology are more compatible than you might think, Chen explained. We have studied this extensively. More importantly, the marriage would be symbolic. A demonstration that our species can unite against common threats. King Daro leaned forward on his throne. Daughter, I would not ask this of you if we had any other choice. But our military leaders estimate we have 6 months before the capital falls. 6 months before our civilization ends. Zara felt the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. Millions of Vulcans looked to the royal family for protection. If marriage could save them, how could she refuse? I need time to consider this, she said. Of course, Ben said. This is not a decision to make quickly. Perhaps we could spend some time together first. Get to know each other as people, not just as representatives of our species. Over the next week, Ben surprised Zara constantly. She had expected humans to be soft and weak, but Ben moved with a strange grace that reminded her of a predator. He was polite and gentle, but she noticed how his eyes tracked every person who entered a room, how he positioned himself to see all exits. They walked in the palace gardens together, and Ben showed genuine interest in Vulcan flowers and plants. He asked intelligent questions about their culture and history. He never pushed for an answer about the marriage proposal, which somehow made Zara more inclined to consider it. Why did you become an ambassador? She asked one evening as they sat by a fountain. I wanted to help prevent wars, Ben said, watching the water sparkle in the moonlight. I have seen what war does to people. To families. To entire civilizations. If talking can accomplish what fighting cannot, then talking is better. Have you ever been in a war yourself? Zara asked. Ben was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. Before I became an ambassador. What was it like? Another pause. Necessary. But terrible. Zara found herself studying his hands as he spoke. They were not the soft hands of a diplomat. They had small scars and calluses that suggested physical labor or training. When a palace guard accidentally knocked over a vase nearby, Ben moved to catch it with reflexes that seemed impossible for a peaceful negotiator. You are not quite what I expected, Zara told him. What did you expect? Someone weaker. Humans have a reputation as peacemakers, not warriors. Ben smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. The best way to keep peace is to be prepared for war. The more time they spent together, the more Zara realized she actually liked Ben. He was intelligent, kind, and had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh despite everything. He listened when she spoke about her fears for her people, and he offered comfort without trying to minimize her concerns. If we marry, she asked one day, would you stay here on Vulcan Prime? Or would I have to leave with you? I would stay, Ben said. Your people need you here. And honestly, I think I would like it here. You have beautiful sunsets. That night, Zara made her decision. She called Ben to her private chambers and told him she would accept the proposal. Not just for political reasons, but because she believed they could build something real together. Are you certain? Ben asked. This will change everything for both of us. I am certain, Zara said. But I want you to promise me something. What? Promise me that you will always be honest with me. No matter what happens, I want to know who you really are. Ben looked at her for a long moment, and she saw that strange sadness in his eyes again. I promise, he said. When the time comes, you will know everything about me. The wedding was arranged for the following month. King Daro announced the alliance to the people, and for the first time in years, Zara saw hope in their faces. The Crothan Federation had not yet responded to news of the human alliance, but their attacks had slowed. As Zara prepared for her wedding, she found herself genuinely excited. She had married for duty, but she had found something unexpected. She had found a partner she could respect and care for. She had no idea that she was about to discover what humans really were beneath their peaceful exterior. And she had no idea that the galaxy was about to learn why other species feared humanity just as much as they respected them. The wedding would change everything. But not in the way anyone expected. The wedding had been beautiful. Zara still smiled when she thought about it, 3 weeks later. The ceremony had followed both Velkan and human traditions, with thousands of people watching as she and Ben promised to stand together. The celebration had lasted for days, and for the first time since childhood, Zara had felt truly happy. Now she sat in their shared chambers, watching Ben tend to the small garden he had started on their private balcony. He had brought seeds from Earth and somehow made them grow in Velkan soil. The strange human plants had tiny white flowers that smelled sweet in the morning air. "The roses are blooming," Ben said, not looking up from his work. "They remind me of home." "Do you miss Earth?" Zara asked. She was reading reports from the front lines, but the news was good for once. Crothan attacks had dropped by 70% since the marriage announcement. "Sometimes," Ben said. "But this feels like home now too." Zara set down her reports and watched her husband work. His movements were careful and precise, but she had noticed that about everything he did. When he ate, when he walked, even when he slept, there was a control to his actions that seemed unusual for such a peaceful man. "Ben," she said. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What did you do before you became an ambassador? I know you said you were in a war, but you never talk about your life before diplomatic service." Ben's hands paused over the soil. "I was a soldier," he said quietly. "For many years." "What kind of soldier?" Ben wiped his hands clean and sat beside her. "The kind that fought when diplomacy failed," he said. "I did not enjoy it, which is why I changed careers. Some people are meant for war. I discovered I was better suited for peace." Before Zara could ask more questions, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The sound was deafening and urgent. Emergency lights flashed red in their chambers. "What is that?" Ben asked, standing quickly. "Attack warning," Zara said, her blood turning cold. "We have not heard those alarms in 5 years." They rushed to the main communication center, where General Voss was coordinating with military commanders across the planet. His face was grim as he spoke into multiple devices at once. "General, what is happening?" Zara demanded. "Crothan assault fleet," Voss said without looking up. 300 ships, including their new dreadnoughts. They jumped in from hyperspace 20 minutes ago and are already attacking the orbital defense stations. "How is that possible?" Zara asked. "Our sensors should have detected them days away. They used some kind of cloaking technology we have never seen before," Voss explained. "Princess, you need to get to the secure bunker immediately. This attack is focused on the capital city." Zara felt Ben's hand on her shoulder. When she looked at him, his expression had changed completely. The gentle, peaceful man was gone. His eyes were sharp and focused, scanning the tactical displays with the intensity of a predator. "How long until they reach the surface?" Ben asked. "Ground assault begins in 2 hours," Voss said. "We are evacuating the civilian population, but there are too many people and not enough time." "What about requesting help from other human ships?" Zara suggested. "The nearest human fleet is 6 days away," Voss said. "We sent the distress signal, but they cannot arrive in time to help with this attack." Ben studied the enemy ship formations on the main display. "These are not random attack patterns," he said. "This is a systematic assault designed to capture, not destroy. They want the planet intact." "How do you know that?" General Voss asked. "Because that is how I would plan it," Ben said, and something in his voice made everyone in the room look at him differently. The first explosions hit the city 2 hours later. Zara and Ben were in the palace command center, watching as Crothan dropships landed throughout the capital. The enemy soldiers that emerged were massive creatures in advanced armor suits that made them nearly invulnerable to standard weapons. "Our ground forces are taking heavy casualties," reported Commander Rex, the palace security chief. "Crothan technology is superior to ours in every way. Their soldiers are faster, stronger, and better armed." Zara watched the security feeds with growing horror. Velkan soldiers fought bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. The Crothan warriors moved through the city streets like unstoppable forces of destruction. "They will reach the palace within 3 hours," Voss said. "Princess, you must evacuate now." "I will not abandon my people," Zara said firmly. "Your Highness, if you are captured or harmed, the Crothan will have won a symbolic victory that could break our resistance," Voss argued. Ben had been silent for several minutes, studying the tactical displays with intense concentration. Finally, he spoke. "General, what is the defensive capability of the palace?" "We have 200 guards, energy barriers on the main entrances, and emergency lockdown procedures," Voss said. "But against 3,000 Crothan assault troops, we can hold for maybe 30 minutes. "The barriers will not stop them," Ben said. "Crothan armor can absorb energy weapons. And their personal shields can deflect projectile weapons." "How do you know so much about Crothan military equipment?" Commander Rex asked suspiciously. Ben looked at him calmly. "Because humans have fought them before." The room went quiet. This was new information to everyone present. "When?" Zara asked. 15 years ago, Ben said. "Before we became known as peacekeepers. The Crothan attacked a human colony world called New Geneva. They thought we would be easy targets." "What happened?" General Voss asked. Ben was quiet for a moment. "They learned that humans can be very dangerous when threatened." Another explosion rocked the palace, closer this time. On the security feeds, they could see Crothan soldiers advancing through the outer gardens. Their armor gleamed silver and black, and they moved with mechanical precision. "All defensive positions have fallen," reported Commander Rex. "Enemy forces are at the main gate." Zara felt fear like ice in her stomach. These were the creatures that had conquered 47 species. Now they were here, and there seemed to be nothing anyone could do to stop them. "Princess," General Voss said urgently. "We must get you to the escape shuttles now." "No," Zara said. "If the palace falls, it will break the spirit of our people. We make our stand here. Then we all die here," Voss said bluntly. Ben stood up from the tactical display. "Not all of us," he said quietly. Something in his tone made everyone look at him. Zara saw her husband differently now. The way he held himself had changed. His movements seemed more fluid, more controlled. His eyes held a coldness she had never seen before. "Ben," she said. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking," Ben said, "that it is time for me to remember some old skills." He walked to the weapons locker and began examining the contents. After a moment, he shook his head. "These will not work against Crothan armor," he said. "I will need to improvise." "Improvise what?" Zara asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify her. Ben looked directly at her, and for the first time since their marriage, she saw who he really was beneath the gentle ambassador facade. "I am going to remind the Crothan why their species fears humanity." The main gates exploded inward with a sound like thunder. Through the smoke and debris, Crothan assault troops poured into the palace. Their armor made them look like metal demons, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. "All personnel to defensive positions," Commander Rex ordered, but his voice carried no hope. Ben kissed Zara quickly. "Stay in this room," he said. "Lock the doors and do not open them for anyone except me." "Ben, you cannot fight them alone," Zara said desperately. "You are not a soldier anymore." Ben smiled, but it was not the gentle smile she had grown to love. This smile was cold and sharp and promised violence. "Zara," he said softly. I was never not a soldier. I was just pretending to be something else. He walked toward the door, pausing only to pick up a simple metal rod from a broken display case. Besides, he added, I am not alone. I am human. And then Ben Torres, peaceful ambassador and loving husband, walked out to meet 3,000 Crothan warriors with nothing but improvised weapons and skills that most of the galaxy had forgotten humans possessed. Zara watched through the security feeds as her husband disappeared into the smoke and chaos of the palace corridors. She did not yet understand what she was about to witness, but she was beginning to realize that the gentleman she had married was about to become something else entirely. Something that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The security feeds showed chaos in the palace corridors. Crothan soldiers moved through the hallways like a flood of metal and death, their heavy boots shaking the walls. Zara watched from the command center as palace guards tried desperately to slow their advance, but Vulcan weapons barely scratched the enemy armor. Where is Ambassador Torres? General Voss asked, scanning the displays. I cannot see him on any of the feeds. Zara pointed to a corridor near the main entrance. There, she whispered. Ben moved through the shadows like a ghost. On the security cameras, she could barely make out his form as he pressed against walls and slipped between doorways. He held the metal rod in one hand, but he had also gathered other items from around the palace, a piece of crystal, some wire, what looked like cleaning chemicals. What is he doing? Commander Rex asked. He should be running, not moving toward the enemy. Ben reached the main hallway where a squad of 12 Crothan soldiers advanced in formation. Their armor gleamed under the palace lights, and their weapons hummed with energy. Each warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed twice as much as a human. Then something impossible happened. Ben stepped into the open corridor directly in front of them. The Crothan squad leader raised his weapon, but Ben was no longer where he had been. He moved like liquid, flowing around the energy blast and somehow appearing behind the formation before the weapon finished firing. That is not possible, General Voss breathed. No one moves that fast. The metal rod in Ben's hand struck the back of a Crothan helmet with surgical precision. Somehow, impossibly, the simple piece of metal penetrated the advanced armor. The warrior collapsed, and Ben was already moving to the next target. How is he doing that? Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. What followed was not a fight. It was art. Ben flowed through the Crothan squad like wind through wheat. He used their own weight and momentum against them, redirecting their attacks and finding impossible weak points in armor that was supposed to be invulnerable. Within 30 seconds, all 12 warriors lay motionless on the palace floor. Ben paused for a moment, breathing calmly, then picked up a Crothan energy weapon and continued down the corridor. I have never seen anything like that, Commander Rex said. What kind of training does he have? Through the communication system, they could hear Crothan voices speaking in their own language. The tone was urgent, confused. Then one voice spoke in Galactic Standard, alert all units. Human combatant in palace. Extreme caution advised. They are afraid of him, General Voss realized. The Crothan are actually afraid. More security feeds showed Ben moving through the palace like a force of nature. He turned everyday objects into devastating weapons. A decorative vase became a projectile that somehow found gaps in Crothan armor. Palace furniture became shields and barriers that redirected energy fire back at the attackers. But it was not just his physical abilities that amazed Zara. Ben seemed to know exactly where each enemy squad was going, what tactics they would use, how they would respond to his attacks. He anticipated their movements with impossible accuracy, always appearing where they least expected. He is fighting 3,000 soldiers, Zara said, and he is winning. In the Grand Throne Room, a massive group of Crothan warriors had gathered, apparently planning their final assault on the command center. Their leader, a huge figure in gold-trimmed armor, was giving orders when Ben appeared at the far end of the hall. He no longer looked like the peaceful ambassador Zara had married. His movements held a deadly grace that spoke of years of training in violence. His eyes were cold and calculating as he studied the enemy formation. "Surrender now," Ben called out in perfect Crothan language, "and I will allow you to retreat." The Crothan leader laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "One human against 50 warriors. You are either very brave or very stupid." "I am neither," Ben replied calmly. "I am just very experienced." What happened next would be recorded in the security feeds and studied by military strategists across the galaxy for decades to come. Ben moved through the throne room like death itself, using every surface, every shadow, every piece of architecture as a weapon or shield. He threw the crystal fragment he had collected, and somehow it ricocheted off 3 walls to strike a support beam that brought down a section of ceiling onto a group of Crothan soldiers. He had used the palace's own structure as a weapon. The cleaning chemicals he had gathered were combined in mid-battle to create a smoke that interfered with Crothan helmet sensors. Blinded, the warriors began firing wildly, often hitting each other instead of their target. Through it all, Ben moved like a dancer, never where the enemy expected, always one step ahead of their reactions. He used captured Crothan weapons with deadly precision, but he also fought with pieces of broken furniture, torn wall hangings, even flower pots from the royal garden. "This is impossible," breathed Commander Rex. "No one person can fight like this." "Humans can," General Voss said quietly. "I have heard stories, but I never believed them. They say that when humans go to war, they do not just fight. They become war itself." The Crothan leader in the golden armor finally faced Ben directly. The alien warrior was bigger, stronger, better armored, and carried weapons that could destroy a building. Ben held a simple metal pole and wore his wedding clothes. The fight lasted less than a minute. Ben flowed around the Crothan's attacks like water, striking at joints and weak points with impossible precision. When the leader fell, the remaining Crothan soldiers simply stopped fighting and raised their hands in surrender. In the sudden silence, Ben's voice carried clearly through the throne room, "Send a message to your fleet. Tell them that humanity is done being peaceful today. Tell them to leave this system immediately, or they will learn why the galaxy fears us." The surviving Crothan warriors moved quickly to comply. Through the palace communication system, Zara heard panicked voices speaking in the alien language. Within minutes, reports came in from across the capital city. Crothan forces were withdrawing to their ships with desperate haste. Ben walked slowly back toward the command center. His clothes were torn and dirty, but he showed no signs of serious injury. As he moved through the palace corridors, Zara saw Velkan soldiers staring at him with expressions of awe and fear. When the door to the command center opened, Ben entered looking almost normal again. The cold predator was gone, replaced by the gentle man she thought she knew. Almost. "The immediate threat is over," Ben said calmly. "Crothan forces are retreating to orbit. Their fleet will likely withdraw within the hour." General Voss stared at him. "How many enemy soldiers did you engage?" "Most of them," Ben replied. "The exact number is not important." "How is any of what we just witnessed possible?" Zara asked. Her voice shook slightly. Ben sat down beside her, and for a moment he looked tired. "Very tired. Because that is what humans are, when we need to be," he said. "We told you we were peacekeepers, and that is true. But we keep peace by being very, very good at war." "I have never seen fighting like that," Commander Rex said. "What kind of training creates abilities like yours?" "Every human receives basic combat training," Ben explained. "But some of us receive much more than basic. Some of us are trained from childhood to be something the galaxy does not like to think about." "Which is what?" Zara asked. "The reason other species choose diplomacy over violence when dealing with humanity," Ben said. "We discovered long ago that the best way to prevent wars is to be absolutely terrifying when forced to fight them." General Voss checked his communication device. "Confirmed. Crothan fleet is jumping to hyperspace. They are leaving the system completely." "Will they return?" Zara asked. "Not here," Ben said. Word of what happened today will spread. The Crothan will remember that humans are not just peaceful traders and diplomats. We are also the species that can end wars by fighting them. Zara looked at her husband with new eyes. When you promised to be honest with me, you said I would know everything about you when the time came. Is this what you meant? Ben nodded. Humans have two faces, Zara. We show the galaxy our peaceful face because we prefer it. But when threatened, or when protecting those we care about, we become something else. Something that most species prefer to forget exists. So your marriage proposal was not just about alliance, Zara realized. It was a message. Yes, Ben said. A message that humanity would protect the Velkan people as if they were our own. The Crothan understood this, eventually. Reports continued coming in from across the planet. The Crothan withdrawal was complete. More importantly, communications intercepts suggested that the entire Crothan Federation was reconsidering their expansion plans. The war is over, General Voss announced. After 30 years, the Crothan have agreed to permanent ceasefire and withdrawal from all Velkan territories. Zara felt relief wash over her, but also a strange new understanding. She had married Ben thinking he was a gentle diplomat who could help negotiate peace. Instead, she had married someone who could guarantee peace by being capable of absolute war. Do you regret it? Ben asked quietly. Now that you know what I really am. Zara looked at him for a long moment. The man who tended flowers in their garden. The man who spoke softly and listened to her fears. The man who had just single-handedly defeated an army to protect her people. No, she said finally. I do not regret it. But I understand now why other species respect humanity. It is not because you are peaceful. It is because you choose to be peaceful despite being capable of this. Ben smiled, and it was the gentle smile she remembered from their wedding day. That is exactly right, he said. Anyone can be peaceful when they are weak. True peace comes from being strong enough to destroy your enemies but wise enough not to. Outside, the sun was setting over the Velkan capital. For the first time in 30 years, the city was not under attack. Children would sleep safely in their beds, and families would not fear for tomorrow. Zara had married a human to secure peace for her people. She had gotten peace, but not in the way she expected. She had learned that sometimes the greatest mercy comes from the greatest strength, and that true love means protecting what matters most, no matter the cost. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment they learned why humans were called peacekeepers. Not because they talked about peace, but because they could bring it by any means necessary.